70%. 70% of all aviation accidents come down to just one thing: human error. Welcome to this explainer on human performance in aviation. Whether you're in the thick of studying for your ATPL exams right now, or you're already a pilot looking to sharpen that safety edge, we're going to break down the absolutely critical human factors that govern how we perform up in the sky.
So, do you know the 3 mistakes almost everyone makes when studying ATPL human performance? Well, it usually boils down to misunderstanding fatigue, misdiagnosing hypoxia, and totally failing to recognize cognitive overload. Today, we're going to unpack these crucial aviation safety principles. I'm going to give you the exact exam tips you need to crush it on paper, and more importantly, stay safe in the actual flight deck. Okay, let's dive into this. Let's look deeper at that 70% number, because frankly, it should command the respect of every single aviator. A staggering 70% of accidents involve human factors. We spend immense amounts of time studying turbine engines, complex aerodynamics, navigation systems, but the reality? The human element is the ultimate hazard. Sure, we're the most flexible system on the aircraft. We're capable of incredibly creative problem-solving in dynamic situations, but we are also the most vulnerable to physiological and mental breakdown. Unlike a well-oiled machine, we get tired, we get stressed, and yeah, we make mistakes.
Section 1. Aero models and safety. The human element. Let's look at exactly how the mind works and fails under the unique pressures of flight.
So, the Shell model. This is the absolute foundation of human factors in aviation. It stands for software, hardware, environment, and liveware. Now, why does this matter in real flight? Well, because you, the pilot, are the central liveware. You're constantly interacting with the software, think written manuals and standard operating procedures. A mismatch here, that might look like misinterpreting a complex checklist. Then you interact with the hardware, the literal physical switches and controls of the airplane. You interact with the environment, battling weather, turbulence, and cabin pressure. And finally, you interact with other liveware, like your co-pilot, the cabin crew, or air traffic control. When there's a mismatch or a breakdown in communication at any of these exact interfaces, an error inevitably happens.
And this brilliantly illustrates James Reason's Swiss cheese model, which explains how those interface mismatches actually become disasters. Think of aviation safety as multiple layers of defense built into the system. You've got technology, strict procedures, ATC monitoring, and crew training. Each layer is robust, right? But each layer has holes. These represent active failures and latent weaknesses. Now, a single error almost never causes a crash. On its own, no way. It's only when the holes perfectly align. Say, ATC gives a confusing instruction, the crew misunderstands it, and the warning systems fail to alert them all at the exact same time that a hazard slips all the way through those defenses to become a catastrophic accident.
Now, these systemic holes build into specific types of human errors. And listen up, because this is a major ATPL exam callout. You absolutely must know the difference between a slip and a fault. Okay, so a slip happens at the execution level. This is when you have the correct intention, but the wrong execution. It's like fully intending to drop the landing gear, but subconsciously grabbing the flap lever instead, just because they're close together. A fault, on the other hand, happens at the planning level. This is a wrong intention, but executed exactly as you intended. Imagine confidently shutting down a perfectly serviceable engine because you misdiagnosed the initial problem. The execution was flawless, but the plan was fundamentally flawed from the start. Section 2. Stress and workload management. The mind under pressure. Recognizing an error is one thing, but preventing it requires actively managing our mental state.
Let's take a look at the arousal curve, which plots our performance against our stress levels. Now, on the left side of the curve, a routine, clear-weather flight can actually be pretty dangerous. It leads to complacency and under-arousal, causing you to make careless mistakes simply through inattention and a lack of stimulation. But on the right side, imagine deteriorating weather, failing daylight, and an unexpectedly busy ATC environment. This spikes your stress, leading to mental overload and over-arousal. Your working memory shrinks, and your decision-making completely degrades. Have you seen this mistake before? Finding that optimal middle ground, where you are stimulated enough to remain alert but not so stressed that you get tunnel vision, is the absolute key to maintaining situational awareness. This is exactly why jet lag hits us so hard. Now, most importantly for your exams, remember the stages of sleep. Deep sleep is strictly for physical body recovery, repairing tissues and muscles. REM sleep, or paradoxical sleep, is entirely for mental recovery, consolidating memories and clearing cognitive fatigue. And note this absolutely critical fact: alcohol severely degrades that REM sleep. So even if you sleep for a full 8 hours after having a drink, your brain never gets that deep cognitive recovery it needs. You'll be fundamentally compromised the very next day.
Section 3. Hypoxia and the atmosphere, the silent killer. Hypoxia simply means a lack of sufficient oxygen supply to the body's tissues. In aviation, there are 4 distinct types you need to memorize. First, hypoxic hypoxia. This is caused by low oxygen pressure at altitude. Your lungs are fine, but there simply isn't enough pressure to force the O2 into your blood. Second, high-hemic hypoxia. This is when your blood physically cannot carry the oxygen, usually from carbon monoxide poisoning binding to your hemoglobin. Third, stagnant hypoxia. This is poor circulation, like from high G-forces pooling blood in your legs. And finally, histotoxic hypoxia. This happens when your cells are poisoned and literally can't use the oxygen delivered to them, often due to alcohol or cyanide. Now here is your golden exam tip. If a question mentions altitude or a sudden cabin depressurization, the answer is always hypoxic hypoxia.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how rapidly our safety margin evaporates at altitude. Time of useful consciousness, or TUC, is the strict window of time you have to recognize a problem and act before you are completely incapacitated. At 25,000 feet, you have a relatively manageable 2 to 3 minutes, but by 35,000 feet, that drops to just 30 to 90 seconds. And at 40,000 feet, which is a typical cruising altitude for modern jets, it plummets to a terrifying 15 to 20 seconds. Keep in mind, this isn't the time until you pass out, it's the time until your brain stops functioning logically.
Think about that for a second. What would you do in this situation? Imagine being at 40,000 feet when the cabin suddenly depressurizes. You literally have a maximum of 20 seconds before you lose the cognitive ability to secure your own survival. This is exactly why memory items and immediate reflexive oxygen mask donning are non-negotiable procedures in jet training. You simply do not have time to read a checklist.
Section 4. Disorientation and visual illusions, when your senses lie.
You know, even when our oxygen levels are absolutely perfect, our biology can still betray us visually. The environment plays dangerous tricks on our depth perception, especially on approach. If you're approaching a narrow runway, the illusion makes you appear much higher than you actually are. Believing you're too high, your instinct is to push the nose down, which creates a very dangerous risk of an undershoot. Conversely, a wider than usual runway makes you appear too low, creating a tendency to pitch up and risk overshooting the landing zone. The solution? Always cross-check your visual perspective with your PAPI lights or ILS glide slope.
Your inner ear, the vestibular system, is just as easily fooled by linear accelerations. A sudden, powerful acceleration during takeoff creates a head-up illusion. It makes you feel like the aircraft is pitching up dangerously steep. The natural but completely incorrect reaction is to push the nose down. Sudden deceleration does the exact opposite, creating a head-down illusion. And if you move your head too quickly during a sustained banking turn, you're going to trigger the Coriolis illusion. This is where the fluid in all 3 semicircular canals of your inner ear gets completely disrupted at the same time, leading to a total, overwhelming loss of spatial orientation. It is incredibly disorienting. The golden rule to survive this: always trust your instruments over your bodily sensations.
Section 5. Threat and Error Management. The fix. So, we've seen the hazards, but how do we practically counter them in the cockpit? This brings us to the absolute core of modern crew resource management, the Threat and Error Management Sequence, or TEM. So, the crucial point is knowing the exact difference in this chain. Step 1 is the threat. Threats are external factors entirely outside of your control, like an unexpected thunderstorm, a complex ATC clearance, or a maintenance failure. Step 2 is the error. Errors are internal. These are crew actions or mistakes made in response to or independently of a threat. Misunderstanding that ATC clearance? That's the error. If a threat or an error is mismanaged, it leads to Step 3, an undesired aircraft state, or UAS. This means the aircraft is in a position, speed, or configuration that reduces safety margins. Flying too fast on approach is an undesired aircraft state. It's the final link in the chain before an actual incident or accident occurs.
To stop this chain from progressing to an accident, we use countermeasures. Hard countermeasures are the physical systems and structural procedures put in place before the flight even begins. Think of aircraft design warnings, automated autopilot systems, and mandatory printed checklists. Soft countermeasures, on the other hand, rely entirely on human intervention in real time during the flight. This is your active situational awareness, your clear cross-cockpit communication, and your direct flight path monitoring to actively catch a slip or a fault before it develops into that undesired aircraft state.
To sum it all up, the human element is the most dynamic part of the aircraft, but it operates under strict physiological and psychological limits. Respect your sleep cycles, know your hypoxia signs, trust those instruments, and always utilize threat and error management. Recognizing our own fallibility really is the first step to true aviation safety. So ask yourself, the next time you step into the flight deck, are you going to be the strongest link in the safety chain or the weakest? If you want more exam tips and clear explanations, make sure to subscribe. Keep studying hard and fly safe.